Hey, it's Mike with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Thursday, and it is September the 24th, and this will be our chart lesson for the day. And another wild, volatile day, as you can see. It looked like we were going to have a range day, and then suddenly we made this higher low. And once we started working higher from here with a higher low, and we didn't go back to the low, first thing you want to do is look for a measured move. So measure that and just move it over. And you can see we went a little bit further than that and then suddenly turned down, traded back down again. So that would have given you a nice target. I would have also, once we made this leg up, of course your first target's going to be the overnight high, but you see we surpassed that a little bit. And so you would look for that leg, and then there's a little two-legged correction in there, usually the center of the pattern. And we didn't quite make that one, but we had this failed break higher, and prices just couldn't push any higher and then turned back down. So uh, that's pretty much how I saw it today. Two legs up here basically. So, and then we sold off again. So, but let's back out and we'll talk about the trades. And it gets a little crazy in here. And you notice once we start swinging around here, there's a bunch of repeat patterns and things in here I'll show you. And that led to some of these trades. But from here on, it was kind of evident we were trending up again. Let's back out here far enough to where it's easy to see. And you can see that's a pretty clear trend up there. But 7 o'clock came right through here, and at that point, this just looks like, a range. And so clearly, though, we've been trending down for probably hour and a half by the time 7 o'clock gets here. So you've got this trend working down. And there's actually another way to look at this too. There's a shorter term little trend in here as well, just in case you were looking at that one. And you get your break, and you're still looking for a new low, even if this one's in play. And you can see this one. I drew this one off these lows, and I adjusted a little bit. Turns out it's the right place, I believe. But usually these gaps right here between these two bars, that'll show you where there's generally some kind of support resistance, like a trend line or midline or something coming through there. So I usually use that like a starting point or whatever. And I drew this off the lows and then drug it up. But anyway, that's one little secret of how to find that. But you should have at least been playing this one. And you get the break, and then you get a lower high here. We actually broke higher and turned down, and that confirms that trend line. Even if you just waited and drew it off those first two, this confirms it, gives you a lower high, second entry short, because you're moving up. You get your first entry, then you go higher again, it turns back down. It just turns back down all in, it breaks higher and turns down all in one bar, but it's still a second entry when it breaks lower there, so you could just go short. I don't think I'd wait till this bar finishes. If you did, you're going short right at the low. You still got a lot of room to go here back down to the lows, and there's no break of this yet, but it's just getting a little risky right here. I think the way I would play this was on the engulfing bar, because that's really where the second entry triggered as well, right there. And you're way late by the time you get to here. You actually get another failure here. It breaks higher and turns down, and it's right off the trend line, but we're starting to get away from the EMA. It's one you could mark green probably, but I don't think I'd wait this late to enter. Your best entry was obviously where I marked the red one there, but this one breaks higher, turns down, same thing. So it's similar to that pattern. Then we get over here, and I marked this one because if you start from here, you get a second entry, and somebody brought this one up on the forum. But the way I'm going to look at this is really kind of congestion. But even so, you still get a chance to go short at the trend line after prices break higher. And But I would look at this as a double bottom. So that's a first entry and then a second entry. So if you're going to enter, I believe this is the better entry. And I really went back and forth. I'd almost make this one green as well because it's just congestion here. This is a pretty strong downtrend, and you've got a couple of different chances to go higher here that keep failing, and so and that is a second entry short. So basically based on that. But again, you got one here, and if you took that one, you're going to get a failure. You might have got a chance to. This is the way I would probably tell you. Normally, I'll tell you not to monkey with your trades, but when this didn't turn down and it actually starts making this another sideways bar with not much body, I probably would have exited with what this would give me and got out of that trade. Because you realize you got to realize, hey, I'm either early or something's wrong here, because it should have taken on down like it did here on this second entry here, and that's really, I really believe this was your better entry in your second entry, because this is just a double bottom. Yeah, it pushes a little lower there, but that's still a double bottom. So count that as a new low, and then first entry, second entry. That's the way I'd play that. If you got in here, you just had a loser, and it happens sometimes. You got the right idea going short, you're just a little bit early. And then of course you had your break here at a new low, and where does it bounce? Right at that overnight. Actually, no, we've already pushed through the overnight low, I believe. Yep. Already pushed through the overnight low there. I just marked that line there because that's where we bounce the next time. But you get your break, your new low, and you get a failed second entry short right here, but that's just congestion, and it really looks like it's left over from this. So really, way I see this after the fact, it was kind of, you didn't really see this during real time, but this would have just moved up here. And you can see that. So I don't think you want to go long right in there either. It's all below the EMA as well. And so you just really don't get a chance to ride this little move up out. Then you're working lower. This really looks similar to this. You don't get your little jog lower here, but it looks similar, and it failed the first time. So, I don't think you want to take that first entry short right there. There's a hidden second entry there. Notice you're going up, you turn back down, you go back up. There's two legs back there, but it's hidden. It's a little bit more advanced. If you saw that, you might take that trade. Under that case, we could make it green. But most people learning, most of y'all learning, aren't probably going to see that hidden second entry in there. And then we just kind of get stuck here at this support. You don't want to be going short down here. You don't want to be going long yet either. So there's no long setup. This looks pretty bullish here, but it's right back into the EMA, and there's resistance there. And then we're just kind of working sideways, and it's a shame that we don't get a chance to enter this move here, but there's just no way to get in it. And I marked it like this, but honestly, you could have seen it. It looks almost like a spiking channel, and you can kind of see that working up through there like that. So either way you saw that, it doesn't really change anything either way. You still don't get a chance to enter it. So, but it's a spiking channel really. I marked it this way originally, but I think you'd be better off to play that as, let's just remove these lines so you can see it a little better. Oops, I moved the wrong one. But you can see that first. Then there's the other side of it basically. Looks like there's probably two tiers in it as well. And there it is. Either that or it's got an overshoot. But I believe it's just a little two-tiered channel working up. It's a little spiking channel. Then we're working down. You get your break, and this is a perfect second entry long right here, and it does tick lower right there, and it does confirm that key entry point. Nice bullish bar. Just go long right there. And so you couldn't catch this first leg, but you would want to be looking for a second leg similar to the first one, because that little two-legged correction is probably the center of your pattern. So that's a great place to go long. And if you catch that one trade, that's all you need today, probably. There's another little hidden second entry coming back here. I'd prefer it to be on this side of the EMA, but notice how we didn't quite touch there. We actually had a little overshoot here maybe, and we didn't quite touch here. So that leads you to think, hey, we may have some more room to the upside if it doesn't turn back down. So that's another one that you might take right there. It's just not a great location. It is off the EMA basically, and it is a really strong move. So if you see that, you may take that trade. It's a little aggressive, but you're not getting a lot of really good trades. So sometimes if you see a decent setup that's a little bit aggressive, you may have to take it, because there's a lot of times we're getting into this sideways stuff, and there's a lot of times we're just reversing and there's no real setups. Somebody actually asked me, sent me an email and says, what do you do when you're not finding a lot of second entries? And what you just have to do is, if you want to trade this, you just have to be a little more aggressive. And you can see it's a really strong move. And I mean, when you start to see all those little bars and stems on both sides and it just keeps going, that's a strong move. But you got to be careful still. So make sure it's off this key entry point. You don't want to be entering too far down here, too far away from the EMA. Maybe right in here, and maybe even here if you had a good setup. But once you get much lower than that, you just kind of got to watch it go. And you can't be afraid to watch it go either. So, but anyway, we get up here to the overnight highs and we break through and we try to go higher once, twice. So there's that double test. This thing is going to work 9 times out of 10, especially that far away from the EMA. Relatively bearish bar. It is also a second entry short. Technically, it's probably not, because there's your new swing lows way down here. So it's not even. I mean, you could make some arguments that we're making a new swing low based on those bars across there, but it still looks like a second entry. But the real reason you're taking this trade is it's the double test, and up here at the overnight highs on a little failed breakout, we should have went on higher there. And when you don't, you're probably coming back at least to the EMA and maybe back to the trend line. So I like that one. And then we're just get stuck down here between the overnight highs and a new low across here. You just can't enter in that. And then of course you got the resistance here as well. And again, you finally get a breakout in the lower high, but now you're right back into the trend line, and we haven't got there yet. So it could bounce and go higher. So you don't really want to go short there yet either. But notice it comes on down here and it makes a failed second entry long. And then it makes a little double top, which is basically a higher low off that move. And it confirms the trend line. So this one breaks higher. It's probably going to trap people when it goes by. So I like that trade. Just try to catch this high. And if you don't catch that one, you don't even get a chance to get in this one. So that's what I'm talking about. You may have to just get a little bit more aggressive, or you just got to sit and watch and catch one of these good trades that comes along every hour or so. And they kind of come in spurts too. You may not get a good trade, and then all of a sudden you'll get 4 or 5 in a row, it seems like, real quick. But I'm just trading this. This is a continuation of this support here. We just get below it. We test it a couple of times. It breaks higher, fails. Notice how we push through the EMA and try to come back, and it confirms that trend line, because you got your first 2 swings, then your touch, and off it goes again. And this time, if you back out here, we bounce early. You would expect prices to be coming down to here, but we just start working sideways here, and we end up bouncing a little early and going higher. But before we get there, there's another. Notice how we start going sideways, and you get a little failed break higher. And this is we're looking for prices to still go lower at this point. So I like it going short you you really could count that as a double, or as a second entry, but this is a double bottom. So I'd just maybe look at it as that as one move up. But if you draw your little trend line here, you get your close outside and your new high all in one bar. You might want to wait on a lower high, but you don't get one. So you're just not getting a lot of second chances on these trades. But we end up bouncing here. And at that point, you want to measure that other leg and then look for a possible measured leg if we go higher. It looks real weak at first, but we end up getting this trend line and it ends up taking off. But notice that you're working higher here and you make a new high and you get a first entry and then a second entry. This is a really big bar. Technically, your second entry is when it broke above this one. So I don't know if I'd take that trade, but it fits the criteria. And there is a little, notice you make that low and you've came back once, and this is the second time that we're coming back to test, and it's right off the EMA as well. So then you run up and you get another second entry. Now this one's a little bit more, I'd be more apt to take this one because this looks almost like a perfect repeat pattern. I mean, it looks exactly the same. So when it worked out, it had a really nice move, so you expect it to work out the same. So I'd be much more or much less hesitant to skip this trade than I would of this one. This one's real close to being green. It's a second entry though. The EMA is turning back up. We made a higher low here. And of course we run up here and we just start working sideways. You get a failed breakout and then you come back and you make a lower high. This actually breaks higher and turns down. So you may go short right there. And you get your true reversal pattern here. So then it looks like we're probably heading back to the lows. But guess what? It bounces here. Let me back out again. This is kind of hard. But make sure you draw your trend line. Whenever you finally make a lower low here, draw your trend line. And you probably would have drawn it here and here and then finally here. On this other one, I believe this was your trend, and then you get a break and two legs up, and then now we're working back. You just get a couple of legs back here, and there's really what it is. There's a bigger pattern going on here. You wouldn't see that yet. So, but yeah, you get your lower high reversal, then you bounce, make a first entry and then a second entry, and it also confirms that trend line. There's your third touch, and that's a nice bullish bar. I like that one. And there's a shorter term channel here working up too. So I like that one. Then you run up here and you get a first entry and then you turn down. This is another one that goes, you get your second entry and all in one bar because it comes down, it goes up, first entry, and then it goes lower and then it turns back up all in one bar. So I like going, you actually, since it broke lower first, you could, go long right one tick above that bar. And you don't really get a good higher low here on this one. It just runs on up and then you get an overshoot, which leads to a break. And you get a second entry long right there. Notice that new high, you're working down first entry and you come back and you get a second entry and off it goes again. And that's your first break of this, but that's also, we've still got the bigger channel and we haven't got to the highs yet. Of course, what we're doing, this line coming across here was that overnight highs, and we're finding a little resistance there. Just make sure you got I wouldn't go long right into that line, but if you got a little room and then it's probably okay to take it. It's a second entry, it's with the trend, and it turns out to be a really good move, but I'd definitely make sure I had room to scalp out before getting back to that. As you can see, it's still acting as support and resistance. And that was another good move. It runs on up. And then we're just kind of working sideways again. But here's another repeat pattern. This is exact same pattern as this right here. I mean, it comes back. You get the first entry. And then you get your second entry right there. Looks very similar to this pattern right here. I just go long right there just because It's a repeat pattern. And it turns back down. You could argue that maybe this was a failure, but that's a pretty good move there. It's much more than what we usually look for. And I think it just moved up a little bit because it was a repeat pattern and people know about those patterns and trade them. But it turns down, and it is a second entry short after a break and a new 2 legs to a new high as well. So based on that, I probably should at least make that green, but I just think it's risky here. I'll mark it. Technically, you already had your break down here and a move to a new high. So that kind of makes you, it really takes away what I just said. There's a break and 2 legs up, but it still works out the same way. It's just kind of a repeat pattern of what we saw right here. Once again, for the 5th time, it's a repeat pattern. Again, you may go short there. If you don't go short there, I don't see any way to really enter that. You don't want to enter this far away from the EMA in congestion to the short side. You're looking to get long down here now. And notice you do have a long entry right there. And notice you're working down, and that is a first entry and then a second entry. It doesn't really look like 2 measured legs or anything, but it's still a second entry long. But the main thing is it bounces off this trend line. The reason I marked it green, I'm not sure if it broke higher here and would have stopped you out and then turned up, or if it traded down and went out and then turned back up. I don't know which way that played out. So that's the danger of trying to enter without waiting on a high or low or a reversal pattern. But this is a key entry point. So, and you do have a break and a new low, but that's a pretty good move down. So you're probably going to be much better off waiting on a higher low. And unfortunately, the higher low comes here and you're kind of working sideways. So just wait on your true reversal. So, and that's right here, and it breaks higher. And there's actually a higher low right here, which if you didn't enter here, and it makes this little jog back and then turns back up again, by all means enter there. Because that's probably going to trap people. This probably trapped, people went long here and it trapped them back out, and then they have to jump back in again, and it rockets up like that. And then again, you're just kind of working sideways in congestion, way away from the EMA. I don't think you want to enter there. I just don't see any, now you're back up here to the highs. I don't see any reason to be entering up here. I don't see any really good shorts either. This one, maybe if you looked at that as a double top and this is a lower high and an overshoot, you might enter that one. But technically it makes a little higher high, so it's still a double top though. So for that reason, if you want to be a little more aggressive, but you finally get your true lower high here and it breaks higher and turns down, but there's still not enough room. And see how you're holding across there, and that's what you're worried about, bouncing and coming back and getting stopped out. Doesn't end up happening, but you don't want to risk that when you're taking a live trade. You're running down. Then you kind of work sideways again here, and you get one failed breakout, but no setup here, too bullish. And then you get another one, and this actually breaks higher, turns down, and it's right off the key entry point, the EMA. It confirms the trend line, so you got a downtrend. I like that one to go short. And now if it goes down here, then you get a little overshoot, which leads to a break. And again, you got a little trend working up, and you don't really get a good chance to go long. And you need some kind of lower high or something to go short to make sure this is over. And that comes right here, still inside the trend line, not a very good signal bar. It drops down, and then finally you get a failure here. But look how you want to see this at least off the key entry point, if not at the EMA. So again, just no more really these are all just too risky and not very good setups. So really our trading day was done by a little after 1:15 or so, and you just don't get anything else here. So that's really it for the day. There's still a lot. It doesn't seem like it, but there's a lot of trades in there, really. I talked about a lot of trades. They just kind of come in, you get stretches where you have nothing, and then you get a few in a row, and most of your trades came from here on all the way up. So, and at one time here, you were still really thinking maybe short here. So, kind of an odd trading day. If you struggle a little bit, especially when you get in the middle here, this is where you really have to be careful too. But this is such a big range that you got clear trends really that make it much more or much less risky to trade it, because it's when it's just going shooting down, shooting up, shooting down, shooting up. But here we're getting trends, and that makes it a little bit easier. The problem is you're just not getting a lot of really good setups. We did in the afternoon or from late morning on, and then we had a little spell in here where it slowed, late afternoon slowed down. We just had a little spell in there in late morning where we had a bunch of entries. It was a little easier to figure out where prices, what they were doing there, and you got a bunch of repeat patterns. So anyway, that's going to wrap it up for the week. This is Thursday, so no chart lessons on Fridays. I hope you had a good week, and believe it or not, another week behind us. But we'll do it again on Monday, but I'm done for today. I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back about the same time Monday. So anyway, I hope you had a good week. Hope you have a great weekend. I'll see you next time. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com.